It all started with a bet. Well, not a bet as such, but a challenge. Shigeru Miyamoto wanted a brand new Zelda game in just 1 year. If lead developer Eiji Aonuma could deliver this, he could create whatever game he wanted. The result was one of the most beloved games of all time. It was an exciting time at Nintendo. After 4 long years, development had finished on The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and audiences absolutely loved it. Shigeru Miyamoto, who had served as director on Ocarina of Time, wanted a follow-up game, and he wanted it quick. He reasoned that by taking apart the dungeons in the game and rearranging their components, his team could make something fun and new that used the same storyline as the original game. Lead dungeon designer Eiji Aonuma had other ideas. He didn't want to create a remixed version of Ocarina of Time. He'd already made the perfect dungeons for that game. Instead, he wanted to make something brand new that would give players a completely fresh experience. Secretly, against his boss's wishes, Eiji began designing his own brand new dungeons and levels. This was a lot more fun than having to revamp work he'd already done. Eventually, Eiji worked up enough courage to show Shigeru what he was doing. He asked permission to stop work on the new Ocarina game in order to make something brand new. Shigeru was surprised, but offered Eiji a deal. He could make a brand new Zelda game, but only if he completed the entire project in just 1 year. Eiji was shocked. It had taken 4 years to complete work on Ocarina of Time. How could he get a brand new title done so quickly? Tentatively, Eiji accepted. Shigeru passed on the torch of the Zelda franchise to Eiji, who was more than a little nervous. He'd never directed a Zelda game before and was already very worried about how smoothly the project would go. But Shigeru wasn't going to leave Eiji to struggle alone. He had plenty of ideas of his own to share, such as reusing art assets and character models to dramatically reduce the time it would take to make the game. What's more, Shigeru had an ace up his sleeve, Yoshiaki Koizumi. Yoshiaki had been playing around with a game concept that he'd come up with while daydreaming. His idea was for a game where the player constantly reversed time to play the same level over and over as they learned secrets and tricks to unlocking puzzles. This concept worked perfectly with Zelda. The series already had the idea of time travel, and getting players to replay content over and over would reduce the time it took to produce the game. Yoshiaki and Eiji split up work on the game. Yoshiaki developed a town full of people, where reversing time could let the player follow different characters around and interact with them. Meanwhile, Eiji created the game's overworld and its dungeons, filling caverns and temples with his new puzzle ideas. Despite the rush to get the game finished as quickly as possible, the team paused to attend a colleague's wedding. Eiji and Yoshiaki both flew to South Korea to enjoy a much-needed vacation. At this time, North Korea was actively sending bombing raids against the South, and the wedding was rocked by explosions. This idea of celebrating joy and life amid a constant threat of death struck a nerve with the team. When they returned to Japan, Eiji and Yoshiaki began crafting a story that focused on confronting the end of the world, how different characters chose to spend their remaining days, or how they reacted to death around them, became a driving force in the game's narrative. The idea of impending doom and a short time limit couldn't be more fitting for Eiji. As his deadline loomed, he began feeling the pressure to get the game finished. He even began having nightmares where he was chased by characters in the game. Shigeru noticed Eiji's suffering and came to propose a new deal. Eiji's work on the game was going very well, but Shigeru realised that he'd set the project a deadline that was far too aggressive. If Eiji needed a bit more time to make sure that the game was fully polished, that was completely fine. To Shigeru's surprise, Eiji was not impressed. He'd spent the last few months slaving away to get the game finished. He'd sacrificed, worked hard, and kept the entire project on track against impossible odds. To accept more time now felt like failure, and Eiji was determined not to fail. He was going to complete this game on time, no matter what it took. And so, Eiji and his team completed the final push and finished work on the game. Against all odds, they achieved their year-long development target. The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask was complete. The game was a real labour of love, and audiences responded well to that. The game went on to earn its own cult following, with with fans appreciating its more somber tone and loving the new gameplay mechanic. Eiji and his team had done it. They'd made a game they could be proud of. From that day onward, Eiji was given complete control of the Zelda franchise. After all, if he'd made Majora's Mask in 1 year, imagine what he could do with more time. Yoshiaki was rewarded as well. Shigeru appreciated his intelligent puzzle ideas and his inventive approach to game design. Yoshiaki went on to spearhead Nintendo's crowning jewel, the popular Super Mario Bros. Franchise. The moral of this story is this: you can do impossible things if you apply yourself. Whether it's completing an entire game in a year, learning new skills, or passing difficult tests, if you work hard enough, and if you're smart about it, you can achieve anything you set out to do. All it takes is the right push.